Back in the day, I say back in the day, how old was I? 18. About 18 or 19. I had to be, no, it's 19. I used to hang out at Fisk University. I was not a student, mind you. I was a high school dropout. I had met this guy. I don't even remember how I met him. I think I got introduced. Yeah, this what happened. My friend Sean, who lives in Atlanta, and had met somebody that was going to Fisk at the time. And he was like, "Come up here with me to the boys' dorm." I was like, "Okay, cool." So I went up there, and then that's when I met the guy. His name was Martise, who has passed away, to my understanding, at this point. May he rest in peace. Side note: I had seen him sometime after this at a sex party in Atlanta, and we just looked at each other. We didn't even speak to each other. But anyway, so I met Martise, and so then I started going up to Fisk University by myself to spend time with him in the boys' dorm. I used to go up there and spend the nights and weekends and shit with him. That's how I got introduced to black college culture. It was the most amazing thing that I think I had ever experienced in my life. Mind you, I was not a student, okay? I went to college in Texas, to the University of Texas at Arlington, far from a HBCU. And it was about 6 years later, anyway. So I was going up there, and they was telling me all the campus gossip at Fisk. Who was sleeping with the professors. I got to see for the first time the Fisk Jubilee Singers. Oh my gosh, that was the most amazing thing. They was having rehearsal. One day we was in the dorm room, and there were some other people on his level. He was on like the top floor. No, he was on like the third floor. And it was a couple of other gay people on that floor too. One of them, no, Charles was on the first floor. Charles had came upstairs, and he was like, "The Jubilee Singers are rehearsing." He's like, "You want to go?" And then Martise was like, "Yeah, let's go over there." So we walked over to the chapel, and we walked in and we sat down and we listened to them rehearse. At the time, they had this girl. There was a Jubilee singer. Oh my gosh, okay. She had the biggest breasts. They were huge. I mean, they was like, you know how your grandmama had big breasts? But she was young though. She was the strongest soprano I have ever seen in my entire life. She was young, and you could hear her over the whole Jubilee Singers. I remember her. She was a real cool person. I remember, side note, later on, after we had stopped hanging up there, she had told my best friend, who I had introduced to some people up there on the campus, Damien. She told Damien, she was like, "Y'all just don't understand. It really looked really, really bad with y'all coming up there and spending the nights in the campus, in the boys' dorm, and y'all weren't students. Like, everybody knew what y'all were doing." So anyway, I got to listen to the Fisk Jubilee Singers rehearse. What else? Yes, I saw for the first time a fraternity and a sorority line cross. Okay, I'm gonna have to finish this later. So anyway, later on, at another time, what was his name? I think his name was Isaac. There was another guy, Isaac and Pradis. Isaac and Pradis were roommates. Charles was downstairs. Isaac was in school for pharmacy. I remember that. I don't know why I remember that. He was in school to be a pharmacist. He came and run into him. He was like, the AKA's got a line that's about to cross. I was like, what is that? And so Martisa got excited. He was like, "Come on, put your clothes on. We're about to go over there." So we walked over to the yard. And everybody was just standing out there. I was like, I didn't know anything about this. I was like, what is about to happen? What is going on? And then all of a sudden you heard these high-pitched voices. And then they started stepping. And then they stepped and stepped and stepped. And, they did their routines and stuff. I was like, oh, this is really exciting. It was a line of AKAs, and it was a line of Kappas. Some Kappas had crossed, which I didn't know what that meant at the time. I just saw, and then what was happening. They were stepping, and then everybody, after they finished stepping, everybody was crying, and they was hugging each other. Oh my gosh, this is so amazing! I'm so happy for you. I'm so proud for you. And I remember when the Kappas were stepping, they were stepping with canes, and it was like, "Don't drop the cane!" They kept screaming, "Don't drop the cane!" But my whole thing was, I was like, well, if they're gonna drop it, why are they using it? They could have just left the canes, because it's hard for a guy to twirl a cane. I see girls do it, the majorettes do it, and they and they be dropping them on the football field a lot of the time. And so I saw Kappas and a lot of AKAs cross, and what else? There was this other dude. Oh my gosh. Okay. He used to be roommates with Isaac, but he changed and got his own room. He was trying to cross with the Phi Beta Sigmas, but he was like really feminine. And they was telling me what happened to him. And they had the Sigmas had, while he was pledging, they tied him to a chair and put a bar of soap in some bars of soap in a pillowcase, and they had beat his ass. And it was like, because he used to walk around campus with a pair of clogs, like some real Dutch clogs, like they was made out of wood. And he'd be walking around the campus just clacking with them damn clogs. And they just kept screaming every time they hit him. They put a bag over his head, and it was like, all we wanted you to do was stop wearing those fucking clogs. And they whooped his ass. And some kind of way he got loose. He called the police, and then his parents filed a lawsuit against the Sigmas. And I don't know whatever happened with it. He won the lawsuit, but it didn't, like, I think they settled out of court. Because then after that, that's when it was like, oh, that's why he got his own dorm room. Nobody else had their own dorm room, but he had his own dorm room, and they gave him preferential treatment up at Fisk. And he went back to the clogs, tight jeans. When I tell you, he had came out the closet after that. And then what else had happened? Pratis' parents had sent him to school to be a doctor. But while he was there, he had discovered the gay club. At the time, it was called Purple Rain. Purple Rain was this shit. It was a fucking hole in the wall, but baby, they played the beats, and it was the only black club in Nashville. Pratis had discovered the gay club, and he had came out of the closet. He started wearing makeup, and he was going to like Fashion Sense and buying women's clothes, but he would buy like a woman's pantsuit. And back in the day, it was like a plastic jumpsuit, and then the plastic see-through boots. That the ghetto girls used to wear. And that's what he was wearing to the club and around the campus and stuff. His parents, from what I remember, did a pop-up surprise and saw him like that, and it was like, what the fuck? And they snatched his ass out of Fisk, and they took him back up north. I think he's from the DMV area, if I remember correctly. And they took him back up there, and they put him in school up there. They snatched him out of school. So I don't know what happened to him. Martise, I don't remember what he was in school for. But I know he was from Chicago or he was from the Chicago area, because him and Isaac was talking about the Soul Tradition of Chicago. And it was like, I know some of them. Well, I had a videotape. Vicky Winans used to have this choir competition on TV, and I had recorded a bunch of those. And so I had took the tape up to the campus with me, and we was... Oh, it is brutal out here this morning. So this is what it's like to be off on a Sunday. Ooh. I get one Sunday off a month. Oh, I'm so glad I didn't put this sweater on. Feels fabulous. to the gym. Then back to the house. Okay, so anyway, I had to cut off the last video because, well, actually I didn't cut it off. The phone cut off because I ran out of space. I had went on YouTube, and child, I had downloaded. YouTube had gave me a free trial, and you can download videos, but they get stored on your phone. They take up the space on your phone, but the video is not actually on your phone. They just use your space. I had like 15 gigs of videos I had downloaded. So once the subscription ran out, I deleted all of them, and it freed up my space. So what was I at? Okay, Antonio was in the room next to that guy that was pledging, and he could hear through the wall them beating him up with the pillowcase with the soap in it. So he heard the whole thing from beginning to end. He knew that they tied him to a chair and put a bag over his head and beat him up or whatever. So when he was telling me about it, I was like, oh yeah, I hear. I didn't know that they do that when you pledge. He's like, no, I was in the room next door and I heard the whole thing. He's like, I had my ear against the wall and I was listening. He was screaming and nobody on the floor was helping him. He was in the room with a bunch of guys or whatever. And so anyway, what else? Oh, pray this. I told you about pray this. Then there was Charles. Charles Caldwell is what his name is. Yes. Like clockwork, baby. So, Charles Caldwell was on the first floor. When I tell you that bitch was a kiki, honey, I don't know what he was in school for. He had helped me get started with pulling the stunts with the checks, but his thing was he went into the banks and did it. Yeah, and he was a student at Fisk. So he had showed me the ropes with that, but I was like 18, 19 at the time. And I had learned a lot how not to do it from watching him because he made a lot of mistakes. So, and also his father is a preacher in North Carolina. Let's see. Charles, one time, this was at the end of the semester, we had the first floor to ourselves because a lot of people had moved out of the dorm early. So we had closed off the door and we had the whole wing of the first floor when you walk in, it goes like this. And we had this side on the first floor. We had closed the double doors. It wasn't a double door. I think it was a double door. We had turned up the house music and we had a house pageant on the first floor in the boys' dorm at Fisk University. We had turned up the house music, bitch. We was acting a damn fool on that first floor. Did nobody come down there and fuck with us though? We had so much fun. I know after midnight, no one was allowed to come into the dorm, but they used to prop that back door open with a rock, and I used to sneak in through the back door and go up to Martise's room. Martise is who I was supposed to be fucking with. Okay. Charles Caldwell, back to Charles. Okay. Charles, one time we got caught at the mall in Franklin, in Cool Springs Mall, in the store called Parisians, baby. After the whole court thing was over with, Parisians had told me you are not allowed to shop in our store ever again, ever. If we find out that you are, you're immediately arrested. They had issued me a stay out order because we was in there trying to write some hot checks. And I was like, that's fine. I was like, I don't even know who the fuck Parisians is. As a matter of fact, I don't even think they in business anymore. Okay. We had got arrested, me and Charles. Went to jail. And I asked my dad to help Charles try and get out. My dad found out that Charles' father is a preacher, and he said, leave his ass in jail. And so my dad came and bailed me out of jail and left Charles in jail. And then when Charles got out, he ended up staying an extra semester, the time of an extra semester in Nashville. But he wasn't in school, and so he was like bouncing around people's houses or whatever, and he was still doing the check thing. And then I guess like the investigators had assumed that there was like a ring of people, and so they started to close in on them. And one day we was over to their apartment that they was all staying in, and somebody knocked on the door and offered to sell them life insurance. And as soon as that bitch, I think that girl's name was Marlo. The apartment was in Marlo's name. And she was one of those ones who gets dressed up and look expensive when she goes. No, she was cisgender, a cisgender girl. She was one of those ones who get dressed up real expensive, and she can walk into the store and argue with them, this, that, and the third, and they give her money back. And they wouldn't, because they felt like they was arguing with a rich woman. There wasn't no ghetto ass bitch. So the apartment was in her name. It was a bunch of them. It was like 5 or 6 niggas plus her boyfriend standing over there, and Charles. She closed that door and turned around. She said, oh my God, they own to us. She said, nobody goes door to door and sells insurance. Who the fuck were those people? And so they all got panicked or whatever. And Marlo had kicked everybody out of the apartment. She ended up losing the apartment anyway. What happened to Charles? Charles, he said he was going back home for a little while. And he asked me to hold his stuff in my house. So I took his stuff from the dorm room because he was going to come back. He was just going home to North Carolina for a little while and coming back. And I never saw him again. I ended up having to throw all his stuff in the trash. Okay. Then Martise was the guy I was messing with. This motherfucker used to fall asleep while we're fucking, like a narcoleptic. And it used to irk me so bad. We'd be in the middle of the most animalistic sex, and this motherfucker would just it wasn't fake, it was real. He was knocked the fuck out. I was like, why does he keep falling asleep? So I would just leave him there, just lubed up, just sleep. And I clean myself up and go to sleep too. So anyway, there's another guy named Marquise. Marquise was, the reason why I knew Marquise because we went to high school together, and he sung with the Gospel Music Workshop of America Nashville chapter. I sung with Inspirational Ensemble, and so there was like a little bit of a rivalry between the two choirs because they swore when they sung Jesus came down from the sky himself to listen to them, and we swore too because our vocals were dynamic as fuck. So this is how I knew Marquise. I went up to Martise's room one day because he wasn't answering the phone. So I just went up there, and he opened the door. He was like, oh, hey. And Marquise was sitting in his room. Now, mind you, Marquise didn't hang out with us. He had his own friend group. But somehow, Sean had introduced him to somebody on Fisk campus. Now, Sean was friends with Marquise. I wasn't. Well, they weren't really friends. They just knew each other socially, kind of a little bit. Sean was really my friend. And so I guess he had found his way back up there because Sean had introduced him to somebody on the campus. And then Marquise had opened the door, and Marquise was sitting on the bed. I was like, oh, I'm going to leave. Because Marquise was a trashy bitch. That was the last time I ever fucked with Marquise. Now, fast forward a couple of months to the end of that semester, Marquise, not even a month, it was like a few weeks. Marquise is walking around, he had his infestation, I don't know what the fuck it was, on his lip. It was huge. I was like, oh my gosh, what happened to your face? And mind you, this is after he had sex with Marquise. He was like, oh, it's just, he called it a mustache burn. I was like, I will never go behind Marquise ever for the rest of my life. Because after I saw him in their bedroom and I kind of assumed that they had fucked, that's when he got that mustache burn. Oh. What else? Oh, shit. Okay, hold on.